This is a throw out the rundown type of show. The Cincinnati Reds are moving on from manager David Bell. We have all of the reaction right here.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a live breaking news edition of Locked On Reds. We are your daily source and sometimes the middle of the night source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr. We have a combined 12 years of experience covering the Cincinnati Reds. This might be our first late night firing of a Reds manager, but here we are. We love these Reds. We love baseball. We've taken that love for the game, that love for the Reds, and we turned it into information for you. And the information we have for you is the Cincinnati Reds have fired manager David Bell, naming Freddie Benavides the interim manager for the remaining 5 games of the season. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Reds. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to be reacting and breaking down the firing of David Bell in this special episode brought to you by Booking.com. This episode is brought to you by those folks over there. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get Booking.com's app today and get started. All right, Jeff, the Reds make a 10 p.m. firing announcement of David Bell. They named Freddie Benavides the interim manager. Speculation running amok right now about what happens next for this franchise. What are your immediate instant thoughts with this announcement?
It's a bit bittersweet because for once it feels like the Reds made a decision based on merit. We've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks where it felt like David Bell almost had immunity because of the way that this franchise is loyal to players, to managers, to front office personnel, to everybody. It's a very loyal franchise. It feels like you have to do a lot to get fired. Mm-hmm. So there's part of it that I'm actually kind of happy that the Reds are moving in this direction. The part of me that is not happy is the fact that we are here. The fact that we had to get to this point, because in order to fire a manager, a team has to underperform. And that is exactly what this team has done all season long. This is the culmination of failed expectations from a performance standpoint. But the reason that I am excited, the reason that I'm looking forward to what is next for this team is that they are making the right decision. This was something that Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic had a very scathing article that included the Reds in a group of teams that do not necessarily make team-based decisions based on on-field performance so long as the bottom line is not affected. They made a decision based on performance on the field, and I've got to believe that this is a good sign for the offseason as a whole.
You know, I said as recently as a week ago that I would be shocked if they did this. And
I'm
in fact shocked.
I agree.
David Bell signed a contract extension before this season that ran him through 2026. Yeah. The Reds are eating all of that money now, which is not something that they like to do. And it raises some very interesting questions as to what this team does next, because they built this team, this organization from top to bottom, from Cincinnati to Daytona, with a philosophy in mind. The hitting philosophy is of one mind. The pitching philosophy is of one mind. Are you going to overhaul all of that again, or are you going to look for somebody that fits into that philosophy? Nick Krall's got his work cut out for him, because either answer is not really a sexy answer that's going to play well in the media. If you do more of the same, you're going to get the same old reaction. And if you overhaul everything, oh, here we go again with another rebuild. This team has been rebuilding since 1896. You know, Those are going to be the reactions that we get from the fan base. So I'm not sure where they go from here. Interesting naming Freddie Benavides the interim manager. Freddie's been around a long time. I guess it could have been Pat Kelly. You could have brought him up from AAA. AAA season winding down already anyway, so he was available. Not Derek Johnson, which I think maybe is a little telling.
I think it's interesting because the Reds did that the last time, right? Whenever they got rid of Dusty Baker, they elevated Brian Price. And I don't necessarily know that it's a one-for-one, apples to apples. They're just never going to give a pitching coach another shot at being a manager. But I think they do have some options, and we can talk about that. I do want to talk about where the Reds go from here, what their next options could be with this team. I really want to continue to look at why this is the best decision, but I want to start first with a question here that I have. What changed? Because about this time last year, it was probably about a month or two past this point in 2023, we heard about the 3-year contract extension for David Bell. You mentioned that. The Reds are now going to eat that money. That's just money that they handed to David Bell on the way out the door. What changed in the 1 year where the Reds were ahead of schedule last year and it feels like they're behind schedule this year? Did they come to their senses and realize that they should not have given him such a long contract extension? Or is this something that now Nick Krall, who said last week, we are evaluating everything, does that mean that the organizational philosophy that they have operated with needs retooling? Because you and I have talked about the fact that it really does not seem like David Bell has final authority, as most managers seemingly do for other teams and in years past, because there is a very front office forward, money ball sort of groupthink that a lot of organizations have. It stems from analytics. It stems from, the ability to run a small market organization. And it feels like the front office makes a lot of decisions. So my question here with this is, how much of a mirror does Nick Krall have in this decision? Because I thought if they were going to move on from David Bell, there definitely has to be some questions levied toward Nick Krall. Why Nick Krall gave him this contract extension, and is how Nick Krall running the team the actual way that is going to get this team back to where they want to be?
Well, I think it's a little more interesting than you going back to the extension being signed. Let's go back a month when Nick Krall looked in the cameras and said David Bell is doing a good job. Yeah. And less than 2 months later, he's fired. You and I, interestingly enough, were playing videos from David Bell's press conference after the game earlier today. And you commented, this press conference is weird. And you started playing me clips about these answers are strange. He's saying it doesn't sound like he was involved in these decisions. And then, less than 15 minutes later, we find out he's fired. So I wonder at what point David Bell knew what was going on. And I wonder with you, what has changed? What is going on? Do they have a replacement lined up? Do they already know the direction they want to go? Are they going to keep the rest of this coaching staff? Is Pickler your next manager? Are they just going to do an internal hire?
I think that what they may ultimately do could differ from what we think they should do. But the fact that we are here is a good sign. The fact that they made this decision, that they understood they needed to make some changes, because you cannot fire a manager after a year that the Reds had without understanding where this team can be and where this team should go. You're not letting go of David Bell if Elly De La Cruz is just an okay ball player, and if Hunter Green is just a solid pitcher. The Reds have their ace. The Reds have their MVP candidate. They need to make sure they're building around them. They need to make sure that they have a manager that is setting them up for success. And while we constantly heard multiple reports from C. Trent, from Charlie, from Gordon Whitmire, from everybody that is in the locker room and seeing how the players interact with David Bell, we constantly heard things like, oh, players love playing for David Bell. They love working for David Bell. But we never saw the accountability. We never saw the type of improvement that this team needed from opening day to now. And for once, it seems as if the front office is in agreement with that. And moving forward, they are going to be the team, or they are going to be the ones that are guiding this decision. I'm curious, though. I want to look at who could be, and we'll start with in-house, because this is going to be a long conversation.
Well, I'll tell you what, the chat is on fire right now. We'll get into a few of that. Let's take our break, come back from our break, and talk about who might be next, and who the folks that are watching live right now on YouTube are talking about being next. We'll get to all of that coming up here in just a minute.
But first, this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. There is no better way to explore our fair country and follow your favorite baseball team. You know that the Reds only have 2 more series. You can go up to Cleveland, you can go to Chicago, and find yourself the best place to stay, because all you have to go is go to Booking.com or check out the Booking.com app, and you search Progressive Field. I almost called it Jacobs Field. think I would have had to put a
Showing your age.
quarter in the jar there. Or Wrigley Field, and you find the spot for you that is closest to the ballpark. Booking.com will help you out with that. They'll show you the best price. They'll show you the best deal, even give you a couple of last-minute deal type offers as well. So the Reds only have 5 games left in the regular season. But Booking.com is the way to go, especially if you want to follow throughout the playoffs as well. Check out Booking.com today. Go to the Booking.com website or download the Booking.com app because it's Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. They're America's #1 sports book. Well, we have a little something different for you right now. Now through September 22nd, now through today, actually, if you can get on this in the next few hours, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. While you're over at FanDuel, make sure you get in on the LE Parlay. 5 games left to hit on the LE Parlay. It usually pays 4-1. You made a lot of money on that this year. LE Parlay is 2+ total bases, 1+ run scored, 1+ steal. Just head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today and download America's #1 sportsbook.
We are talking Cincinnati Reds baseball here today, all day, every day, all week, every month. Because we are Locked On Reds every single day. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to get at least 30 minutes of Reds talk each and every day, all throughout the offseason leading up to spring training. We're going to be with you talking Reds baseball all the way. And we are talking about the fact that the Cincinnati Reds have fired manager David Bell, named Freddie Benavides interim manager, at least for the rest of the season. Only 5 games left for that. Steve, I kind of want to look first at in-house options because there are definitely lots of conversations that we will have over the next couple of days looking at potential guys that could be managers of this team. But we know that the Reds are loyal. As much as this decision is a little bit out of character, I do not expect, I would be surprised. I do not know as of right now who the favorite would be who is currently outside the organization, but I would be surprised if they went outside the organization for this hire. I think the next manager is currently within the organization.
I think they will go outside, but it might be a name we know. It might be a familiar face. It might be somebody that has been here before in another capacity. I don't think, unless some drastic changes occurred in Barry Larkin's way of thinking, I do not think it's Barry Larkin. Hiring Barry Larkin to manage this team would be part of a philosophy shift.
Yes.
It would be undoing what they've done over the last several years. It would be more control of the manager. It would be a lot more manage with your gut versus manage with the analytics. It would be a lot more of Barry being the final end all versus the consortium of people that gather around with Kevin Pickler and make a lineup. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it would be Barry Larkin. I know a lot of fans want it to be Barry Larkin. It's very risky for Barry to take a job managing this team. You know, right now he's the Hall of Fame shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds that everybody loves, but managers don't last forever. They eventually get fired and it tarnishes your reputation. It tarnishes your image. And I don't know that Barry wants to take that on. Pat Kelly is another guy that you might want to consider giving an opportunity. Definitely. He's been managing for this organization for a long, long time. He has a lot of minor league baseball underneath his belt. He could be a candidate. Freddie Benavides, interim manager now. I feel like if Freddie was going to be a manager somewhere, it would have happened already. I feel like he's settled into that grandfatherly role of I will advise you, I will help you, but I'm not going to be the guy making the decisions. Derek Johnson is an option because he's here. The whole system is built on his pitching philosophies, and you want to keep him around. So I don't see Derek Johnson going anywhere. And if he's going to be here, maybe they add manager to his title. Those are just the names that come to mind. I know Skip Schumacher wants out in Florida. Yes, he could be a guy. Aaron Boone, I think, has saved his job in New York. There was a stretch there where it looked like he might be fired, and Aaron Boone could be a guy that you bring back. And my candidate, if I'm bringing a guy from the outside, I want to have a conversation with David Ross. I want to see what David Ross thinks about this roster and how he would manage it and what he would do, because I think he's a guy that's not that far removed from his playing career that the players will like, the players will relate with, but also he's a guy that will hold them accountable.
Yes.
He's a guy that will call out the things that he sees. And I think that's what this young core needs. So for me,
100%.
David Ross would be the guy.
That's the number one thing that I'm looking for in a manager, because I don't think that Nick Krall is completely shifting the way that this team will run. So there's going to be somebody that fits into the mold, not necessarily the exact same as David Bell, but a similar situation where he is part of the decision-making process. He is not the final decision maker, but they need somebody who can keep the team accountable while coaching them, while teaching them, and making sure that they understand what's at stake. And for me, the reason why I think the Reds made this decision, Steve, and I don't know this to be true, but I have a gut feeling about this, and I'm curious to see if it plays out. I think something did change in the mind of Barry Larkin. I think Barry Larkin said, I want this, because I think that he has remained around this team for this reason. He has been looking for his spot. He has been waiting for his opportunity. And he says, now is the time to go for this. A lot of guys have gone through sophomore slumps this year. And as much as we will analyze what that means and what the slump entailed, Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strain with injury and with ineffectiveness, there were so many different guys that really hit a wall this year in this season. I feel as though most of these guys are getting ready to come out on the other side of it. You've got a couple of guys that you've got to coach through some more, like what does Matt McClain look like when he gets back? What is CES to this team? How does he fit in with all of this? But I think that Barry Larkin has made a decision that he wants this. And while there will be plenty of guys that get opportunities and interviews, if Barry Larkin wants it, he's going to be the guy that gets it.
Well, there's another name floating around in the chat. Well, and several people have said it. This one's the one in front of me. Your name says Votto.
I think that he could be part of the coaching staff. Listen, he's not a guy that liked. I mean, maybe I wouldn't say that.
Okay, hang on. I know where you're going with that. Let me get to another comment. I don't think I can find it, but Dave Pemberton's in the chat, and he asked, is it true that Joey Votto had conflict with the front office, with the coaching staff on his way out? And could that impact him coming back? I'll say, yes, it is true. He had conflict with the coaching staff. Can't reveal the sources on that because it would cause problems for them. But I know for a fact that Joey Votto had problems with this coaching staff his final year here.
So when there's a new guy in town, I don't think that Joey Votto would take a managerial role, but could he be a hitting coach? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows how to hit a baseball better than Joey Votto. And I think you can take it a step further. I don't think anybody knows how to articulate that knowledge to other people better than Joey Votto knows. So he could definitely be a candidate for a coach on the staff. I don't think he would be the head coach of the staff, but I look at this and say that that's got to be a big part of this, because yes, in a perfect world, the Reds are looking at the lack of success on the field and saying, the manager, we need to make a change at manager. We need to make some moves this offseason. We need to do all of this. But I do not think an organization that is ran as conservatively and loyally as the Reds are makes this decision without a target in mind. And I think Barry Larkin is that target.
This from Dave Pemberton. He says, I think Barry's statement a few weeks ago regarding playing 500 baseball was him putting his hat into the ring.
That's a good one.
Barry has always wanted to coach, but he's wanted it when the team is on the cusp.
Yeah.
That lines up with your way of thinking. And I hope you're right that Barry's thought this through, because there's real danger in damaging his legacy.
And I agree.
But I think it's also correct what you're saying, what Dave's saying, what a couple other folks in the chat are saying, that this team is on the cusp. And this would be the time to jump in and help push these young players over the hump that they clearly couldn't get over this year, whether it was injury or just actual playing. They couldn't get it done.
And I think, I mean, to your point, I 1000% agree. This puts Barry's name in an interesting conversation. How does he perform as manager and things like that? It's the reason that I think that Don Mattingly never managed the Yankees, so that Yankees fans could continue to see him as a Yankee player and not have to see him as a Yankee manager. And I think it'd be a little bit interesting, but we are a far more loyal fan base than a Yankee fan is. I'm not worried about that. But I do definitely hear you and agree with you on the pressure that Barry Larkin would face as a manager of his team, the guy that he started and ended his career with.
All right, Jeff, there's a lot going on. There's hundreds of folks in the comment section right now. Lots of comments to get to. We're going to start digging into these questions, digging into these comments, guys. And we're going to do all of that coming up right after this. The best way to enhance your baseball watching experience is with PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's so easy to see why they're the best because you can win up to 100 times your money with PrizePicks. All you need is as little as 4 correct picks and an entry, and you could turn $10 into $1,000. All you need to do is pick your favorite players like Ellie De La Cruz or Tyler Stevenson. Find the stats you like. Homers more on Tyler Stevenson. Homers and steals more on Ellie De La Cruz. Just click more or less. Get started today. Download the PrizePicks app, use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. So that's good for you.
It's not bad.
That's good news for you. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we're going to dive right back into this, Jeff. The comment section is on fire. Let's talk a little bit about Skip Schumaker. His name keeps going by here on the screen. Do you have any thoughts on him? I know he wants out of Florida, and I don't blame him for wanting out of Florida.
No, and I think that he has done as much of a job as you can do with the roster situation that you constantly have to deal with as a Marlins manager. Think about all the different players that he has to see. I mean, there's got to be a lot of guys that whenever he's looking for a pinch hit or he's looking for a guy to give a day off to one of his main starters, he's got to be like, your name, yeah, you're going to go play. But I also think that he is the kind of guy that played a career in which grit was the center of his game. And he understands the dedication that is needed for winning. And as much as I hate to say it, he played on the Cardinals, and the Cardinals kind of know how to do that. I'm being rational about this, I promise. But I think that is a kind of mentality that is admirable in a manager.
I agree. I would not have a lot of problem with Skip. I think it would definitely be something interesting. It would be something different. I don't know how he is as far as holding players accountable, but I suspect that he would be a guy that held players accountable. This is interesting from Branch Brown. Our buddy Branch is in the chat. Branch says that Nick Krall can win him or lose him on this decision.
Yes.
This manager decision. Do you agree with that? Are you there on
1000%, because Nick Krall this offseason had already had a lot of pressure on him to fill certain holes. This team needs a cleanup hitter. This team needs another starting pitcher, needs to kind of refresh the bullpen a little bit, and some other moves on top of that. It's not an offseason that he can set back on his hands, maybe take a nice trip down to an all-inclusive resort or something like that, and just have a nice offseason. He's got to be busy. But now he added, get the right guy to lead this organization on his to-do list. And he absolutely has to nail this, because if the Reds come back out in 2025 and do another 2024, he's going to be the guy that we're talking about in this Emergency Live podcast a year from now.
You know, I agree with everything you just said, but I want to be clear that the right managerial hire does not exempt him from going and getting a right-handed power hitting outfield bat. It does not exempt him from fixing the fifth starter role in the starting rotation, and it doesn't exempt him from bolstering this bullpen. All of those things still need to happen. If he hires the right manager and doesn't do any of those things, I'm going to be calling for his ouster anyway. Those things need to be done.
It's an easy, and we say this all the time. Every dayers will know how much we use the Sparky Anderson quote, but like if Sparky didn't have the players that he had, he wouldn't have been the manager that he was. So you can go get the best manager in the world, but if you don't fill the roster's holes, you're not going to win ball games. It's a player-driven league. It's a player-driven sport. And if they don't have the right guys on the field, it doesn't matter who is yelling at them from the dugout to get things done. And that could be another reason. You mentioned accountability with Skip Schumaker. It's like maybe he does have that ability, but how do you keep revolving door accountable, which is what the Marlins roster is.
Right.
So I think that there are a lot of folks, and if you are married to the idea that it must be somebody outside the organization, then Skip Schumaker is a very attractive guy when it comes to this position.
This from Luke.
And he might be attractive too. I don't really have that sort of knowledge, but yeah.
We'll have to ask Hannah. All right, this from Luke. Poverty teams placate their fans with blasts from the past. I love Larkin, but if they hire him, it's to shut you up, not win. And I disagree with this, although I understand where this sentiment comes from.
Yeah.
This is from years of losing. This is from years of rebuild. This is from years of the Castellinis not living up to their promises. That's where this comment comes from. And I get it, but I don't agree that hiring Barry would just be to shut you up, not to win. If Barry takes this job, it's exactly for what you said, which is this team is on the cusp and he believes he can push them over the top to win and add to his legacy, not tarnish it.
He knows how to keep players accountable. I think that he has the chops to be a manager. He hasn't shown it because he hasn't had any sort of job, because he's always said the only job he wants is this one. He does not want to manage the Marlins or manage the Royals or something like that. He wants to manage with the Reds. He wants to coach with the Reds. And to dredge up history, let's take it a step further in this way. What chances would you give this of being another Tony Perez situation?
Not a chance. If they hire Barry, he's going to be given at least 3 years to get them
I would agree.
a playoff series win.
I would agree.
He would be given 3 years. It would not be. It would certainly
from
be
ownership, probably not
Yeah,
from fans, but from ownership.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct. This from Ryan. Ryan says Barry would be a great mentor and motivator. I'm concerned a bit if his baseball philosophy is too far behind the modern game. He says a lot of things on the broadcast. I'm not sure if they all translate now. There is some concern for that. I mean, Barry would be a shift in philosophy. We kind of hit on that.
Yes.
He's a little bit different. He will rely much less on what the computer is telling him to do, and he'll rely a lot more on how hot has this guy been over the last 5 days, and is he going to play or not? I think they did this with the pitching. Chris Welsh and I talked about this. They brought in Kyle Bodie. They did all of these things. They went all in on the analytics, and there was some of the baseball knowledge lost in that course. And then we saw the Reds make a course correction where they didn't completely change the philosophy, but they reined it in a little bit. They added back in some of the old school baseball guys and the scouts and the people that would give you the eye test, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes.
And it worked. They found a balance. And I think they can do that in the managerial role as well. I think you can rein back in the analytics a little bit, bring in a little bit of the old school, the guys that have done it before. Barry Larkin has a lot of cred. What he says has meaning with all of these players. Just ask Ellie De La Cruz. So I think you can have it both ways with the right hire.
And I think that does take you back to your point. If they do bring in Barry Larkin, it signals a bit of a shift in how the Reds operate, because he will have a little bit more of the final say. Like the way that we were describing, the way that I was understanding how this team was ran under David Bell, at least during the 2023-2024 season, I'm not going to say that David Bell was superfluous, because obviously he was there for a reason, but he wasn't the guy that was making those ultimate lineup decisions. Think of how many times a guy was on a hot streak and then he would sit. Maybe he has a big game, couple of homers, 4 hits, something like that. Next day he has an off day. It seemed like it happened more often than not, and it was a very annoying trend. And you constantly heard David Bell, this was a scheduled off day for him and something like that. You ain't going to hear Barry Larkin say that. Barry Larkin's not going to say that. I don't think Skip Schumacher would say that, because those are the guys that are running their teams, and that's not how they're going to let their lineup and their roster be dictated.
Kevin checks in and says, what about Brett Boone or Jay Bruce? Interestingly enough, Jay Bruce was at the ballpark today and was recognized on the big screen. I don't think he would make any type of coaching debut as the manager of the Reds. He hasn't worked with the minor leaguers. No. He hasn't done anything at spring training, really. I think that would be a fun story for a hot minute, but I don't think that's going to happen.
That's an important distinguished thing here, because kind of going back to the last comment that was talking about placating to the fans and bringing back a fan favorite, Barry has worked at all levels of the minor leagues as a roaming instructor. He has worked as an advisor during spring training. He's been around. There could also be a little bit of consideration, although I don't know if he's vying for this sort of job. Eric Davis has been an advisor and an instructor throughout the minor leagues and through spring training and things like that. We haven't seen Jay Bruce and we haven't seen Brett Boone doing that sort of a thing. So I don't think that they would take that jump from not doing anything of the sort to being the ultimate dude that's the manager of a ball club. I think if it's a Boone, it's Aaron Boone. And kind of to your point, and I don't want to get too far into this because we'll leave it to Locked On Yankees to really go that deep. But I think if they're out after the first round of the playoffs, he's out too.
Okay.
So he could be available.
Okay. Let's run through a few more of these names just because it's fun. I think many of them are non-starters.
Yeah.
We'll start with this one that's, I think, a non-starter. Terry Francona's name is in the chat. He's not retired from Cleveland to come to Cincinnati, giving up what the Guardians were doing to come deal with this mess with the Reds. And he's retired. I like him, but that's not going to happen. How about this one? The Cowboy.
I don't think he wants to.
I don't think he wants to either. And again, he hasn't really worked with the players. I think he clearly still has good smarts for the game and he sees a lot of things, but I don't see him wanting to be back in the dugout. He doesn't give off that vibe.
I would expect him to be part of the pitching coaching staff before taking a step into the managerial seat. And I don't think he ever wants to do that. I think he's very comfortable with what he does now.
Joe Ortega with an interesting pitch of a name. Chris Sabo, who has in fact been a manager. He's managed in college baseball up in Akron, managed the Zips. So he does have some managerial experience.
And there's a chance that a guy like that could be considered. I would almost expect, especially with the job that he did this year with Dayton, I would expect Vince Harrison to at least get an interview for this job. I don't know that he would get it, but I think that he did a very good job. You talk about revolving door of rosters. There's no more revolving door of rosters than a minor league ball club. And he took that team to the playoffs there in the Midwest League.
Here's another interesting name. Not that I think he'll be the manager, but let me tell you why I think it's interesting. Kevin floats the name Eric Davis. If Barry Larkin ends up the manager of this team, Eric Davis will be on his coaching staff. He'll be 100%.
I bet he could be like the bench coach or something if they don't keep Freddie Benavides. But I would figure that if Barry Larkin gets the job, they're going to give him the opportunity to build his coaching staff. I think he keeps Derek Johnson, but I think you could see a possibility of a new hitting coach, a new bench coach, a couple of different new opportunities. And Freddie Benavides is a guy that's going to get a very serious interview with this as well. So he could still be part of the organization in some capacity. But yeah, I would imagine that Eric Davis is going to be a part of this coaching staff in some way next year.
Yeah, Freddie, I keep hitting on Freddie as the grandpa that you ask for a little advice every now and again, not the guy that's going to run the ship.
I mean, I don't want to call him old. Sounds like you're calling him old.
Well, he's older than me.
No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. All right, here's another name. Now you just threw me off. Joe Madden. I think that Joe Madden probably wants to be back in the dugout somewhere. I don't think the Reds are going to offer the kind of money that Joe Madden would be seeking. And I'm not sure that he's a good fit for what this team needs right now.
No, I think if you hire Joe Madden, you're hiring a new front office, or at least a new leader of the front office. Because Joe Madden is a guy that wants a lot more control than even Barry Larkin would be getting if they gave the job to Barry Larkin. So I would be surprised if it were Joe Madden.
Ricardo Reyes says Molina. No. Yadier Molina. No.
Boy, that would be a plot twist.
Oh, you guys are just getting crazy now. Tucker Barnhart, Ken Griffey Jr. None of these guys are going to be the managers. I think we've hit on most of the actual viable possibilities.
And look, you can also say, okay, well, if you're talking about Barry Larkin, then let's just start throwing up former player names. Again, Barry Larkin has experience as a coach in some capacity,
as does Eric Davis, which is why I think he would be part of Barry's staff if they go that route.
It's easy to say, well, we're picking off like the top 5 and most popular Reds ever, because we are. But at the same time, these guys have sort of situated themselves into this conversation, whereas most of these other guys have not.
How about Sean Casey? Sean Casey served as the hitting coach in New York with Aaron Boone. He's got some coaching experience, not a lot, but another former beloved guy around here.
I think he's given himself to the media aspect of the job. I think the hitting coach part of that last year was a little bit of, we just need somebody till the end of the year, and we know that you know your stuff, and we know that you can kind of articulate that to folks, but I don't know that he's going to take a long-term coaching job.
I've seen Joe Girardi's name go by a few times. The Reds offered him the job before they offered it to David Bell, and he declined. So I can't imagine they would go down that road again.
I don't know what I think about that, because his exit in Philadelphia just looked so bad because they were not good under him. And then Thompson, who takes over, just turns them into this juggernaut. And I don't know that it was him. It's possible that Joe Girardi was constricting some part of their game. But I don't know. I would not put Joe Girardi high up on my list of non-Reds candidates on this. And we will go through this. This will definitely be a key focus for us, not really until the Reds make a decision. But we will be going over some names like this. And I will have some more thought-out thoughts on Joe Girardi.
Obviously we threw out our rundown to get this episode out live. There are hundreds of people still in the chat.
Appreciate everybody.
So maybe we'll keep going a few more minutes here and see if anybody else has some thoughts they want to share as far as David Bell being fired. I've seen Corky Miller's name come by a few times now. This is a guy that has worked within the minor leagues. Yep. He's been a roving catching instructor within the system for a long time. He really is a fan favorite. I can't see him jumping straight to the managerial role, but I could see him being involved in this all-star staff that we're now developing here. I could see him replacing J.R. House as the catching coach and maybe third base coach.
By the way, J.R. House this year has made some good decisions. I know that we don't often talk about good decisions from third base coaches. We normally talk about their bad ones, but there's not been a whole lot of, oh my gosh, how could J.R. House let that happen? Or how could he wave him on when he should have given the stop sign? Or, second guessing all of his things. We haven't been second guessing J.R. House a lot this year, which probably means he's had a good year.
Ryan says viability, and there's a discussion going on in the chat about this, so that's why we're going here, Jeff. Viability of Scott Sorias as the Cincinnati Mariners could use the Seattle Reds manager, maybe.
The Cincinnati Mariners,
Seattle. Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
I don't know. Scott Service was a guy that it kind of felt like he was getting the best that he could out of that Mariners team. Mm-hmm. The Mariners had some holes on their roster this year that they did not address in a timely manner. And I think that was a big reason why they underachieved as much as they did, because they took advantage of the fact that the Astros just had a horrible start to this season, but they couldn't keep that momentum going. I don't necessarily know that I put that all in Scott Service. So I think that if someone were to look at that and say, well, Scott Service was fired this year, why would he be on the list? He definitely has a little bit more intrigue than I think people would give him.
Chris Furnish, we're bringing back all the 1990s guys, says Joe Oliver has experience. He does. He managed in the Boston Red Sox system. However, he is out of baseball now. He's not managing. He's selling real estate in Florida. That's right. I don't think we'll go pluck a guy out of his Saturday showings to be the manager of the Reds next year. But
keep him busy 6
months. I love all these 1990s names getting thrown around. This is great. Anybody else? We talked about David Ross.
Yeah, for you, okay, if I were to tell you while you're looking at this, because I'm curious of your answer here. If I were to tell you at some point this offseason, the Reds were to get a bona fide cleanup hitter, let's say an Anthony Santander. B, they got a legitimate starting pitcher, like somebody we know we can trust.
Press conference kind of guy.
Or C, they fired David Bell. Which of those three would have surprised you the most?
This firing of David Bell.
I agree.
That surprises me the most. I
thought he was going to be here.
I would have lost money. If people had asked me to put money down on David Bell being fired before this contract ran out, I'd have lost money.
I thought they were going to make a change at hitting coach, and I thought they were going to make a change at a couple other of his, key lieutenants and things like this, but I did not think David Bell would be fired. So the fact that it happened before the season even ended is what is so surprising to me. And I'm not saying I thought he should be here next year. I just thought that's how the Reds would operate.
Ryan says Votto is the new Pope. Send up the white smoke. I love it. That's great. So, there's been a few comments regarding the relationship between Joey Votto and the team that have come by here. And I'll dig into that just a little bit more. I don't think with David Bell being gone, that just suddenly fixes whatever hard feelings there were in that relationship. I think the primary disagreement, the primary angst was between David Bell and Joey Votto. But, everybody else is still in place. The front office is still in place. The ownership group is still in place. Yeah. Everybody's still in place. So at the very least, maybe this will allow us to get Joey Votto back for Joey Votto Day here sometime next season. And Joey would be open to that. I don't see Joey taking a coaching gig, honestly. Joey's going to get paid, and he's going to be a national announcer on MLB Network or the Fox broadcast.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to see Joey Votto.
Or he's some sort of traveling baseball media personality guy or something like that. Like, I don't know. Like, for some reason, the name Anthony Bourdain is coming to my mind, like a baseball Anthony Bourdain, if that existed. And it doesn't exist. So maybe they create it with Joey Votto. I could definitely see that happening. But yeah, I don't know that there is a whole lot that immediately changes just by getting rid of David Bell. They still need to show it to me that they're going to go get the players that they need to get, that they're going to get the right manager, that they're going to situate their team in the correct manner. Because over the last 3-4 months, I have really begun to wonder if the current talent and the potential that the players on this roster have can be correctly managed and correctly employed. And that is going to be the biggest question that Nick Krall has to answer. And he cannot answer it simply by making a good hire and saying the right things with this firing, as I expect we will hear from Nick Krall hopefully on Monday.
Now, yeah. He'll do this press conference at 1 a.m. We're going to have to go live at 2. That's what's going to happen the way things are going tonight. Our buddy Josh checks in. Hey, Josh, haven't talked to you in a while. Ask about Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill leaving the Yankees to come to the Reds. This, again, I think falls under the category of guys that have not been coaching, have not been managing. Paul O'Neill announces on the Yes Network, does some of the radio broadcasts as well, I think. Another cushy gig. I put him in the same category as Cowboy. Got a good gig, knows what's going on in the game, but probably you're not going to get him back in the dugout.
Yeah, I do not expect that we are getting somebody that has absolutely zero coaching experience whatsoever. Like, it's going to be somebody that has at least been a roaming instructor within the minor leagues, or at least has some sort of spring training advisory capability or resume, as it were.
Ryan asks about a return of Kyle Bodie to the organization in some form. No, I think we're going the other direction. I don't think we're going back. That would be deeper into the analytic, deeper into the computer-driven decision making. I don't think we would go that way.
I don't know that Barry Larkin is a decision that shuns analytics. Like, definitely think he is less analytically driven than some, but I think that he will at least consider them when they need to be considered. But there are a lot, and I've talked with a lot of folks about this Reds team that have kind of relayed this thought process to me, that it feels like at times there aren't regular baseball smarts that are applied to how this team is run. Like, there's not boy, this guy's just he's on a good run right now. Like, it kind of felt like they gave up really quick on Rhys Hines, and it sort of felt like they really stuck a long time with Will Benson. And different things like that, because yes, there are some analytical numbers, and Will Benson has great bat speed. So you could say, well, there's probably a turnaround coming, but there's other factors that are in play, such as guys just not seeing the ball well. And how are they feeling when they step on the field? Like, do they feel the weight of the world on their shoulders? And how do you fix that? Or do they feel as though they can be a little bit aloof with a play here or there? And how do you fix that? Like, there just seemed to be a whole lot of finer details that were not filled in by the current coaching staff. So I think that more than anything led to this change in manager. But how do you fix that with a hire? I think you get the right guy in there, and you maybe lean a little bit away from the analytics, but you don't completely get rid of it.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying a little bit earlier, there's a little course correction that's needed here. And they got it right with the pitching, and I think they can get it right with the overall analytics as well. Mr. Juan has a great requirement for the next manager, and that is he wants somebody that is willing to say something in a press conference. So that gone are the days. I wonder if is David Bell going to have a goodbye press conference? It's going to be,
I really think I did a great job, and I'm just sorry that it didn't work out. But the team is almost there, and the players, they're doing very, very well. They're really playing good.
The first thing I thought whenever this news, other than what are you kidding? Seriously, what? After I thought,
by the way, I wish people could see what went down in the 5 minutes around here. That
said the word what
that we got the news, because Jeff's walked around as we're gathering equipment. We weren't set up to be live. As we're gathering equipment, and he said what like 25 times while we were doing it.
So after I thought all of that, the next thought that I had was, we just came out with David Bell bingo. We'll never get to do that again.
It was.
We just came out. I should have done
Nick
this
Krall
like 3 years ago.
We're not having this. No bingo
that's the
for
straw
you.
that broke the camel's back is that we got bingo. Quite frankly, we could have filled that card. We'd probably fill that card every single day. But yeah, no more David Bell bingo.
No more David Bell bingo. Let's see. We're winding it down here, guys. I appreciate you guys so much. There's still hundreds of people in the chat right now, Jeff. It's fantastic for what is now going on 11:25 at night Eastern time. I'm excited that if we got breaking news like this, we're in the same place here in the Eastern time zone to be able to do breaking news together. This has been a blast. Guys, before we get out of here, I'll give you a couple more seconds to throw things in the chat, stuff to address.
While you're doing this, I think that this just shows where Reds fans and where Reds country has been all year long. And that is with this sort of decision, with this sort of move that the Reds have made. They understand that Reds country was done. They needed something. They needed a little bit of thing to grasp onto. Make a change. And if that change was David Bell, fine. If that change was a hitting coach, fine. But they made the bigger change first. There's going to be more changes coming. Mm-hmm. You don't just let go of the manager and you keep everybody else. There's going to be some other positions that will turn over. But this is the Reds understanding the assignment and looking at this offseason and knowing that change is needed for Reds country to buy back in. Because if you looked around Great American Ballpark for this final homestand, there were a lot of empty seats, and there shouldn't have been. There was a lot of folks, and I remember you saying this specifically early on this year, that you bought tickets to that Pirates series knowing that the Reds are going to be in a really good spot in the month of September, in a really good spot to maybe clinch a playoff appearance or even do more than that. And instead, you were coming here to see Paul Skeens face Hunter Green doing a rehab start. Like that,
but I got a bowling shirt.
Unacceptable.
I got a bowling shirt.
You did get a bowling, and you got me one too. I appreciate that. We'll definitely have a bowling shirt episode coming up later on this offseason. But it's unacceptable that we got to this position, and for once, the front office agreed with us, and they did something about it.
Well, and I think it's hitting everybody that way. I mean, look at how many people are here with us tonight as we scream towards midnight. Carrie, this is big news. Carrie says this is big news. I agree 100%, and that's how it hit me. Sometimes you see an organization, whether we're talking football or baseball or basketball, hockey, a little bit less, but any of the major sports, they fire a manager, and you're like, okay, it's not a needle mover for me. This can move a needle. This has the potential to change the direction of the franchise. So for me, I agree, Carrie. This is big news. And what they do with it is going to be something to really pay attention to all throughout the rest of the offseason.
And look, we're going to be talking about the Reds every single day. And what we will be talking about until the Reds have a new manager is the search. Who are they talking to? Who are they thinking about? Who is interested? Who is interesting? All of that will be covered every single day here on the Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast here on YouTube and on your favorite audio podcasting app as well, because we're going to be talking about it every single day.
I'm gonna go with one last comment before we get out of here, Jeff, because this is a shout to you, I think, from Mr. Juan. Mr. Juan says he wants whatever manager Juan Soto wants to play for.
Yes, absolutely. Call Juan Soto. Have Ellie text Juan Soto. Have a meeting. Say, we're going to sign you. Who do you want to play for? Bam. There you go. Easy. Good call, Mr. Juan.
All right, gang. We're going to be back in your feeds again tomorrow with the episode I think we were going to do before all of this happened. So
getting you ready for Cleveland, looking at this Pirates series and the amazingness that was Ellie De La Cruz, the return of Hunter Green and how strange that was. And we've got to talk about Nick Martinez because there was a great article by Mark Sheldon at Reds.com. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out. But we got to talk about Nick Martinez as well. So make sure that you join us on the next Locked On Reds podcast. Why, Steve?
Because we are going to continue to follow this information. We're going to follow the news, the rumors, the reactions from the organization, gather it all up, bring it here to keep you locked on Reds every single day. No more David Bell bingo. That's the worst.
Man, I only got to do one of those. Only got to do one of them.